What's going on, everybody? This is Fry. So today I am going to cover some of the biggest questions that we all have, namely, what is the meaning of life? What is the point of anything in life if we're just going to die at the end of the day and not experience anything then? And third is, why is there so much suffering in the world, aka why do good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people? So I'm going to be giving you a little bit of an explanation totally based on philosophy, and I'm going to be using a philosophical theory which is called simulation theory. This is something which is accepted by a lot of scientists and geniuses. This isn't just going to be some thing I'm making up off the top of my head. And with that, I'm going to sort of explain step by step how we can find life to be meaningful, not be afraid of death anymore. It's actually going to give a little bit of an explanation of what is death and what happens after. And I'm also going to be explaining what is the meaning of pain and suffering and how we can sort of be okay with that on a certain level, as I'll explain in a little bit. Now, there's only really one thing you have to agree with me on in order to make this theory work. Sort of one leap of faith that we're going to agree. We're really going to build the entire theory on this presumption. And it's a pretty simple presumption. It's not going to be believe in God or believe in religion. It's going to be something actually that is going to be easier to believe the less you believe in religion. And that is very simply is that our experience and our consciousness is natural. It is the result of nature. It's the result of evolution. You have chemicals that combined and formed cells, and those cells formed tissue, and that tissue formed our organs and our brains and our hearts. And that is what creates consciousness and what we know as the human experience. Now, once you agree that it's coming from a natural cause, that means it can be created, because theoretically, a very technologically advanced civilization, for example, would be able to combine chemicals and cells in such a way and arrange them and make a brain and actually create consciousness. They could either do that biologically, like I just explained, or they could even do it through a sort of computer simulation, which basically simulates the different parts of our brain and of our consciousness and just makes an identical replica using some sort of computer. Why don't I show you now a quote from Elon Musk where he explains that logically this explains most life. Most life is actually a simulation.
The strongest argument for us being in a simulation, probably being in a simulation, I think is the following. That 40 years ago we had Pong, like two rectangles and a dot. That was what games were. Now, 40 years later, we have photorealistic 3D simulations with millions of people playing simultaneously, and it's getting better every year. And soon we'll have virtual reality, we'll have augmented reality. If you assume any rate of improvement at all, then the games will become indistinguishable from reality. They'll be indistinguishable. Even if that rate of advancement drops by 1,000 from what it is right now, then you just say, okay, well, let's imagine it's 10,000 years in the future, which is nothing in the evolutionary scale. So given that we're clearly on a trajectory to have games that are indistinguishable from reality, and those games could be played on any set-top box or on a PC or whatever, and they would probably be billions of such, computers or set-top boxes, it would seem to follow that the odds that we're in base reality is 1 in billions. Tell me what's wrong with that argument.
In other words, our existence and consciousness and reality probably is a simulation of the sorts. Now, this doesn't mean that it's any less real or meaningful. Our feelings are still the exact same feelings as they are before. Our love is real. Our fears are real. Simulated reality is reality. That is what we are experiencing. And this is sort of just a way to explain how all of our feelings and our consciousness came into existence. Now, in order to find meaning out of this sort of life, I'm really going to have to first bring this up to the next level. And I want to focus what we could imagine someone who is a member of this advanced race the one that can create any number of simulations that they want, and they're going to be almost identical to actual reality. So what are they going to do? They're going to live out their life, and it's going to come close to the time that they think they're going to die. What would they do? And theoretically, they could just upload their brain and their consciousness to a simulation, to a computer, and live forever. Again, we're working under the presumption that consciousness can be created, so therefore it makes sense that consciousness can also be transferred. This isn't some wild imaginary theory. This is actually something that scientists and inventors are working on right now. Since I just love Elon Musk, I'm going to show you one more quote from him. Check this out.
Versus some sort of Ray Kurzweil scenario where they download themselves into a computer?
You will be essentially snapshotted into a computer at any time. If your biological self dies, you could probably just upload into a new unit. Literally.
Pass that whiskey.
So just imagine you were actually able to upload your consciousness to a simulation, to a computer, and you would have complete control over what you would be able to experience, what kind of environment you would be in, where you would be, who you would be with. What would you do? And I think the answer for most of us would be everything on our life's bucket list. All of the love, all of the fun, everything we wanted to just experience in life. We would travel the world. We would have all kinds of the relationships that we always wanted to have. We would have all the fun and all the pleasure. And we could be doing that for hundreds and hundreds of years, just crossing everything off our bucket list of all of the experiences which we want to have. But at a certain time, imagine that sort of existence. Again, you live forever. You're in a simulation. And you're just able to have whatever you want. There's no trials. There's no challenges at all. You just get everything that you possibly desire. After a while, that is actually going to get super boring and actually super meaningless. Part of our psyche, the way we are, in order to be happy, we have to be faced with real challenges and overcome them, or else we would just be completely bored and actually just go out of our mind from this complete sort of meaningless existence. And the next thing, logically, that you would do, the next simulation you would enter, would be one where there actually is a real set of challenges, one in which you believe that you are in base reality and this is a real life and you're born into a world and you have to overcome challenges and you have limitations, not just completely this big smorgasbord of excess and you just get whatever you want, because that isn't meaningful when there's no challenge. In this sort of life that you're born into, you can grow up as a child. You can have real feelings for your parents, for your siblings, for other people. You can feel real fear that you wouldn't be able to feel otherwise if you had the security of knowing that you could just get rid of the danger whenever you wanted. You could feel real love. You can feel real loss. These are all real emotions, which are both positive and negative, that really make life meaningful. You would go through an entire life like that, having all of these meaningful experiences, and eventually you would die. There's going to be an end to it. And what happens when you die is you're just going to sort of go back to being yourself, your original self, in sort of the former reality you were in. The same way when you're done playing a video game or done watching a movie, you are sort of absorbed in that. And when it's over, then you kind of just go back to your life. That is what it's going to be when this life simulation that we are in is over. You'd be able to actually run many simulations like this over and over. When you're done with the first life, you'd be able to go into a different one where the conditions are completely different. Maybe the universe is completely different. You'd be a different person in a different body. And therefore, it is possible that every person in the world is actually one person in the previous reality, experiencing a lot of simulations simultaneously through the eyes of every single person individually. That is just a way of explaining how not necessarily is everyone in your life just completely made up by the simulation. It could be they actually are real. It also might explain why we have a natural instinct to help others, because we will actually be benefiting ourselves in our original reality by helping other people through their experiences. Now, life is hard and life has pain and suffering, and I really don't want to come here and degrade anyone's pain and suffering and say, well, it's really not that bad. It is very, very hard, and some people really suffer to the point where it's impossible to even function as a healthy person. But what this can do is actually put pain and suffering in a perspective where we don't completely lose hope from the suffering that's in our life. The same way some people like watching a scary movie, and what that scary movie does to them is it makes them scared. It makes their blood boil. It actually causes this sort of emotional, existential pain because you feel immersed inside that movie, and there is a certain enjoyment in experiencing that thrill and that fear, because even though it is painful somewhat, but it's real. It makes us feel these very, very intense emotions that we wouldn't be able to otherwise. And that's the reason why there is pain and suffering, and why bad things, quote unquote, happen to good people. The fact that through these challenges of life, we do suffer, it's only momentary. Our life is actually, the 80, 90, 100 years that we're alive is actually just such a relatively small portion of our existence. And at the end of it, we're just going to wake up. Our life feels so long to us because, again, we are inside this sort of limited simulation without the awareness of everything which is outside of it. But compared to the infinite expanse of time, our life is really just like a movie that lasts a few hours long. So, what is the meaning of life? The purpose of this life that we are in is simply just to experience as many real things as possible. And we get to choose what our experiences are. If you want to have a lot of pleasure, then you're able to go after that. If you want to have relationships with other people, you can totally go for that. Any career you want, any ambition and anything that you really want to pursue, having those experiences is the whole point. And this is also why we don't have to be afraid existentially of death, because really, after we die, we do not cease to exist. We just go back to our former selves and we are able to continue existing and continue experiencing other things. Even though our current body and this simulation will sort of be over for us, there is going to be yet another simulation and another experience to be able to try to infinitely experience as many things as possible. And if you have pain and suffering in your life, just know that this life is not our entire existence. It's only a very, very small part of it. And the pain and suffering experiences are just as important for us to experience as the happiness and joy and pleasurable ones. So this was just one way of explaining our existence. There are other ways of explaining it, and I will be happy to make more videos about this in the future. If you have a good explanation, which is different than the one I just gave, explaining the meaning of life and explaining what happens after we die, please let me know in the comment section below. I'm going to be carefully looking at the comments of this YouTube video. Also, as usual, if there is anything in the world of philosophy or psychology, anything that you feel like is difficult to understand, let me know what it is in the comment section below, and maybe I will make a podcast on that in the future. I really hope this can help people overcome their existential crises as it did help me, and I will see you in the next video. Peace, this is Fry.